Well, let's get our guest on now then, because he might be able to give us another Scottish perspective on the situation, among other things. Former Scotland international Greig Laidlaw joins us. How are you, Greg?
Very well, thank you guys. Pleasure to be on, and looking forward to chatting to you.
Great to have you on. And you're obviously out in Japan at the moment, and the top league season was delayed a little bit, but it's underway now. But we've just been chatting about the whole France COVID Six Nations situation. Obviously, we're supposed to play Scotland at the weekend. So have you spoken to any of the boys in the Scotland camp, and what do they make of it all?
Yeah, I've spoken to a couple of the guys briefly on the subject, and I think just the frustration first and foremost, obviously from everybody's point of view, I guess, not just from Scotland, from supporters to, I'm sure, the French team as well. Because they've obviously been playing well, and I'm sure they were looking forward to playing back in Paris. So yeah, frustrating, difficult times, and it's part of the world we're living in at the moment. And I guess the bigger picture, for Scotland is when that game can be played, and hopefully we can get all the players available to be able to make it the spectacle it deserves to be.
That's a difficult thing, isn't it? I mean, it's just not knowing. As a player, you've been in that camp for over a decade. If you were in there now, you're training, you're in that bubble, but you've no idea if the game's going to be replayed, when it's going to be replayed. You're reading the media. It must be tricky for them.
Yeah, it must be, and I think, I guess, the players have probably had to learn to adapt, over the last period of time anyway, adapt into a lot of new things, playing in empty stadiums when it's quiet, adapting to games being cancelled, in domestic leagues. So I guess it's becoming a new normal a little bit. Obviously, nobody hoped it was going to get to this stage in the Six Nations. Sadly, it's come to that, but I think for the tournament's sake, for everybody's sake, everybody is hoping obviously the games can get played and it doesn't affect the result of the tournament.
Speaking about adaptation, I'm sorry if I'm jumping on your questions, Tim. It's got nothing to do with COVID, but tell me honestly, tell me about Japan. I just want to know how you've adapted the family. How big is the flat? I mean, so Greg was in Clermont with me, and you had a nice house, and you had some outside space, and you could run around and stuff. But every single picture that I've seen, unless you're very good at communication, the sun is always out. You seem to have a big smile on your face. I'm sure the boys are basically, like drinking your words in terms of knowledge that you can pass on to the team and stuff. How's it been?
It's been awesome, thanks, Benji. So far, obviously a lot different when you sort of first arrive. And I've travelled to Japan before, thankfully, and but you know what it's like travelling to a country and then actually coming to live there. It's two different things. So I came out myself first for the first couple of months, which was actually brilliant. So I sort of found my feet a little bit, and then Rachel and the boys, they travelled in December, and I arrived here in October. So yeah, mate, it's not quite Mars, but when you first get here, it's
far off.
Just a bit like just the silly little things about going to the supermarket and trying to use the self-serve checkouts, praying that the ladies don't ask you if you want a bag for your stuff. Just keeping your eyes down and trying to get in and out there as quick as you can.
No, that's like 99% of your time in Clermont, mate. It's just as soon as you started sort of roughly blabbling a little bit of French, then you decide to bugger off.
Yeah, that was it, mate. I was just getting there starting to get there with some of my French, and then, sadly, time was up on the French, or certainly my time with Clermont, and time to come out to Japan. So I think my French, although it probably wasn't brilliant, Benji, I think it's going to be better than my Japanese.
Mate, talk us through your first couple of weeks, because we caught up, I think, 2 weeks on the phone now, and you had a fairly shaky start to life in the apartment. So talk us through what happened in the flat.
Yeah, quite literally. I've had 2 earthquakes since I've been here, Johnny. The first one I was still on my own, and as Benji mentioned, we were in an apartment. I just overlooked the training facilities here at the club. Actually, it's just out to my right hand side, and I was just lying on a sofa one night, just watching a bit of TV. I think I'd just been on the phone back home to Scotland, and I almost felt sick. I was like, I don't feel too well, and then I sort of looked up, and the whole curtains were moving. And I was like, this is a bit strange. And then I've obviously realised what's happening. So that was my first experience, and then the second one was a lot more frightening. I think it was the weekend of the England game. I think England or the second game, can't remember. And we were in bed 11:15ish at night, sound asleep, and both Rachel and I, we get an alert on our iPhones. Sort of, when you're sleeping, I've sort of rolled out of bed, sprung up to my feet, and I was sort of, what's happening type thing, and Rachel's looked at her phone. It was, an earthquake alert, and then sure enough, literally 10 seconds after that, the whole building was on the move. And when I say on the move, it was really moving. So we had a bit of a fright, that night, and people who've met here already, texted, making sure we were okay and what have you. So yeah, this part of the world, the buildings are incredible. Apparently, the building we live in, it's built on rollers. So it's built to
that's
move.
What you want, rolling down the street.
Yeah, that's what you want. Yeah, that's it. So could have been flying down the street for our I knew, but yeah, we're okay, and incredible engineering, I guess.
But mate, you said it was like a 7.3 or a 7.4, so it's not a small earthquake. That's huge. What was scarier, the alert on your phone or the actual earthquake? You said that you basically absolutely crapped yourself when the alarm went off. What was worse?
Yeah, well, at the start it was that beat, because as I sort of said to you, when it was a loud alarm, I've literally rolled out of my bed and I'm sort of standing on my feet at the side of the bed before I realised I was sort of up and wondered what was happening. But once the building started moving, that it started to get pretty scary, to be honest. And I think you get told to run the bath, fill up the bath full of water, just in case the pipes burst and you don't have any water in the house, and open your front door as well in case the building gets any movement, in case you get trapped inside. So once you start hearing things like that, you start getting it starts to become pretty real. But yeah, as I said, incredible buildings we get to live in.
I don't want to joke about anything bad, but basically beating England in Twickenham, you would have been on roller skates even on this side of the world, mate. So in the end, it's not too bad.
Yeah, exactly, mate.
Did you enjoy watching? Like, first time, obviously, for me, my family, first time since Dad played in that game in '83. For you, Uncle Roy played in that game as well. How much did you enjoy watching the first Scotland win in 40 years at Twickenham?
Listen, I thought it was fantastic, and I think it's funny, isn't it? Because when you first step away from the game, it's sometimes quite hard to watch, and but I've been out for a couple of years now, which is brilliant, and I guess I got to do it on my own terms, which makes it better. But coming back to the boys that got the win for the first time since 1983, I just thought they thoroughly deserved it. To be honest, Beats, I thought they were the better team on the day. They really sort of took the game towards England, and that just seemed to be their attitude. And I truly believe the better team won on the day. So that's credit to the whole group. For going down there and getting the win. And sadly that second week, against the Welsh, we just came up short, and probably a game that the boys should have won. And after speaking to them, and I know they're pretty frustrated.
And you mentioned settling in, Greg. We've talked about earthquakes. We often speak to people on here about what it's like to settle into life in France. You mentioned it might be a little more tricky settling into life in Japan. Just give us an idea of the other kind of cultural things. People often talk about going to the Onsen. I don't know what that's like in COVID times, if that's allowed. If you've been, have you been to an Onsen yet?
Yeah, I've been actually. We've there's one just kind of not down the bottom of the road, but 10 minutes down the road there. They have been closed actually, because we're still in what's classed as state of emergency here in Japan, although the cases are quite low. But earlier on they were open, so yeah, we have been down. We've been down to the one that's near us is really good. So you've got basically a family section which is outside. So obviously you're covered up. You've got your undies on. You've got your speedos on, whatever you like to wear in there. But if you want to take on the inside, it's you're fully naked and immersed in the Japanese culture of the onsen. So I've taken the boys down a couple of times, which seems to be commonplace. A lot of the Japanese, go down there with their families and stuff as well. So it's part of the culture, and good to experience it.
Awesome. How have you found the standard, mate? Like, obviously now you've done Pro 14, Premiership, top 14 latterly and now out there in top league. How have you found the standard generally of training compared to like a Clermont week in, week out? And then the standards, I know there's only been a couple of games that was pushed back, but how have you found it so far?
Oh, listen, Beats, it's been brilliant. And I think in terms of like the work ethic and stuff of the players, the Japanese players, it's excellent. You certainly can't fall out. They train really hard, and certainly how it works here at Shining Arcs. We've got quite a lot of company players that make up the majority of the group, and then obviously with the foreign guys, and we only have 3 professional Japanese players within the group as well. So the level's pretty good, to be honest, mate. I think we've got some good players here at NTT. Christian Leilefano, sadly he's injured his Achilles. Got a guy called Fletcher Smith came over as well. He's played a lot of rugby in New Zealand. Jimmy Tupou as well in the second row. He plays 6 as well. So a lot of good players. The standard of the league is pretty good. There's caps on like foreign players, obviously, when you're playing in a competition. But there's been a lot of, I think, island players came over, Tongans, Fijians, Samoans, when they're quite young, so they're passport holders. So obviously they don't count towards the foreign players. So you're playing against some pretty heavy hitters and some tough teams. We played against Toyota there at the weekend. They put us away fairly comfortably at the end, but they're a pretty good team with a lot of players with that sort of makeup.
And let's talk about your time in France then, Greg, because Benji touched on it. You were there with him. How much did you enjoy your few years in France? And give us an insight into what it's like turning up at the Stade Marcel Michelin. Is Benji the first person you see? Do they put him in front of everyone and say, here's a French Englishman to welcome all the foreigners in, or how does it work?
It was a little bit like that for me, actually. Benji, wasn't it? Because Benji was good mates with Jason White, who I know has been on the show as well. I'd actually, once I'd signed for Clermont, I headed out one weekend to go and have a look at some houses, etc. And Jason had arranged a sort of get together with Benji and the whole family, and Benji had invited along a few of the other guys along, Nick Bender and Flip Van der Merwe and stuff as well. So that was brilliant for me. I think just to have that sort of English speaking person that I knew was going to be at the club when I first went there. And my time in Clermont was awesome. I thoroughly enjoyed it. A fantastic club, and some great people in that part of France for sure.
I properly setting up. If there was any doubt of him ever going to sign for Clermont, then he rocks up in Clermont. The sun is shining. We have a few beers and have a brunch at the house and have a great time. He went in a box of a mate of mine who basically drinks red wine for breakfast and who fell in love with Greg and it was saying how much he wanted to invite him to do this, to do that. Then on a Sunday, didn't Jason take you to l'Auberge de la Moreno, which is like a restaurant up in the mountains, which you eat the truffade, which is like the local delicacy in Clermont. It's like a potato dish that's absolutely delicious. So he had the weekend. There was no chance in the world he could have possibly signed anywhere else. And then he signed. And then we had the shittiest season of the last decade, the year after. Not because of him, but because we won the league that year. It's that year 17 where we won the league, but we lost the Champions Cup final. And after that, the first thing that we did was to go to Vegas after basically to start our new season, which wasn't the smartest thing to do. And we had, I think, a total of 19 injuries at some point. Greg actually arrived injured, or you were injured yourself pretty early. And remember, you try to rush back to come back because you hate to be the injured guy that joins a new club, right? And one of the big signings. So he was rushing to come back, but then took it a little bit too quick. So basically, first season absolutely shite. Second season tremendously good.
Yeah, it was a bit like that, wasn't it? It was your guys' fault for all going on the piss for a couple of weeks before I arrived. So I never got to go on that trip. I knew a couple of the new guys that signed. I think the first thing they done was went down to Ibiza with you boys and got on the beers for a couple of weeks. But I was a little bit late because fortunately for me, I went on the Lions tour, so I turned up a little bit later. And then I think it probably was my fault a little bit that season, because I was the first guy to get injured And then after that, it was just a bit of an abomination. After that, everybody seemed to get injured, and as Benji said, I think we had about 17 or 18 injuries. But I think that was testament to the squad. I guess when we were there, my second season, we were able to bounce back, won the Challenge Cup. Sadly, we were beaten in the final of the top 14. Which that definitely is a game that I think about quite a lot. And it was a bit of a disaster because I would have loved to have won it for sure.
Were you disappointed not to stay on, Greig, a little bit further at Clermont? Because I remember ages ago talking to you before you signed. I think you were between Clermont and Toulon, and I was saying, look, just do not go to Toulon, go to Clermont, like big club, stability, good structure, it's the place to be. But I got the feeling you did your years, but you were absolutely on fire. You were in competition with Morgan Parra, who maybe got a little bit more, not favoritism, but he's obviously absolute legend at the club. It's pushed very hard, and Frank Azema didn't renew you. Were you disappointed not to stay on? Because you were playing so well and extremely well. It seemed like the club suited you down to the ground. You were on fire every single week. You're fantastic. Was it disappointing not to keep going a little bit more with Clermont?
Well, yeah, of course. I think anytime you, as you mentioned there, Beats, like anytime you play for like a big club, and certainly somebody like Clermont for me, and I was delighted that I ended up signing for Clermont because, as I talked to you at the time, I was talking to Toulon, and but I just didn't feel that was the right fit for me. And obviously, I knew Morgan. Morgan was up at Clermont, legend of the club, and a great rugby player as well. But I just felt that Clermont was a better fit for me as a player and as a person. And I truly believe it turned out to be like that. So, of course, if I probably had an opportunity to stay, I would have certainly looked at it, absolutely, because I was, as Benji mentioned, I was probably just properly settling into my life in Clermont and really enjoying it and playing good rugby. And but I guess probably the biggest frustration for me is just the way it ended in terms of the COVID. Not really being able to finish my sort of last season. At Clermont, I think we'd qualified already, Benji, hadn't we, for the quarterfinals of Europe and stuff like that as well. So and I've got to try and push on and try and get as far as we can in that competition, and again try and win the top 14. So yeah, a little bit frustrating to end like that, but it's such as life. So you look at new opportunities and you move on.
I don't know if you saw Greg, but Frank Azema announced that he's going to leave the club in the summer.
Yeah,
and it's a conversation that myself and Greg had a fair few times. So you're too humble to say it's Greg, but the only reason why he didn't get re-signed is because Frank was basically under a lot of pressure to renew that squad, to basically get the new guys who are going to be the future leader of the teams. So there was a lot of decisions. Nick Bendenon, Ice Toeva, Greg, flipped the year before. There was a lot of guys, Damien Schuli, the same year as me. There was sort of questions about, listen, we want to keep you. We absolutely adore you. But at the same time, you got to think of the future for the club. And Greg was definitely one of them. I mean, you only arrived at the club that you were already in the leadership group. The first season was shit for you, for everyone. It was just a shite season. Second season, you were captain a fair few times. Not the captain of the team, but still, we're really pulling it through. I remember the Challenge Cup final, Morgan gets injured after 20 minutes, and then you came on. I don't think you missed a kick or something. And there was a sort of a sense that, it was going to be something, not just a guy that's there to play, but a guy who's really there to deliver, to bring something. And the only reason why he didn't get re-signed is because there was that necessity of bringing some from fresh guys who are going to be leader for the next sort of 10 years. We spoke about it on the pod here a couple of weeks ago. I always said I adore Frank. I think he's a very human guy. But there was always a sense when he resigned, is it not just that year too much? Because at some point your chat is just not going to hit enough. And he's got the balls to basically apply. That's what he said. He mentioned you actually, Greg, in the French press last week or 2 weeks ago by saying, I applied to myself the same reasoning that I said to Ice Toeva, to Julien Pierre before, to Greig Laidlaw, to Nick Bendenon, about saying, I love you guys, but I've got to think of ahead, and I'd rather not re-sign you the year too much. The year, the extra year, there would be too many, and I want to apply it to myself. I have 2 more years of contract, but I'm going to get out of it in the summer because I just feel that I've hit that limit.
Yeah, I think, as you say, Benji, I had a good relationship with Frank, and certainly when I first read that in the press, I was surprised. But when I hear you say that, I could almost see Frank, making that decision. I think that's the type of man he is, and yeah, he might have, you know, another opportunity in the pipeline, but I think he's made that decision for the best interest of the club, and I think he'll truly believe that. And you know, and he's been there a long time. You know, as you said, Benji, I think 11 years, something like that.
Pretty much, yeah.
At Clermont. So that's a long time, you know, to, as you said, to try and drive standards, to almost have the same voice talking all the time. And I know he's made a couple of changes of the coaching staff this season as well, which has probably helped him. But I think it says a lot for him to you know, to step away from a 2-year contract, you know, and certainly from my time there at Clermont, you know, I know how much the club meant to him. He's a real passionate man.
And Benji, we spoke about it last week. You said you were going to do some digging for us, get straight on the phone to Frank afterwards. So did you? Is the move to Montpellier a done deal? And has he got a job for you and Greig next season?
I said that if you saw in the press after my phone call that I signed for Montpellier, that means the phone call went well. So he didn't pick up. So the phone call did not go very well. But to be honest, he did answer one of my texts and stuff, because I just said that I hope he's okay and all that, and he said, yeah, no, it's just a long time coming. You know, we both know what he was talking about. There's always been a doubt in his head about, wasn't it already a year and a half ago, the year and a half too much, basically. So he's trying to correct a mistake. Apparently there's nothing with Montpellier, apparently. So he's apparently, okay. I think it's going to be a matter of zeros. It's the best negotiation to say, no, I don't want to go to Montpellier where we've added a zero. Yeah, I'll go to Montpellier. That'll be fine. So we'll see about that one. But no, I spoke to a couple of leaders from the Clermont group. And to be honest, he called them all on Sunday to say that's the first thing he's going to say in the Monday morning meeting. And the boys, nobody knew. It really is a self-inflicted decision. He hasn't said anything about the rest of his staff. He hasn't said anything. Just to put it in between brackets, the club have said, we've accepted, obviously, if we find a suitable solution for the summer, because at the moment they've got nothing. I'm sure they will find somebody good, but you never know. And there might be, I don't know, Michael Cheka might be saying, yeah, I'll come, but I'll come with all my staff. That means you need to get rid of all the other ones. That's a huge a big, huge check that you need to write to your entire coaching staff. So to answer your question, no, I did not speak to the boss man, but I will soon. And at the moment, the players knew absolutely nothing about it. They understand it, but they feel bad. I know Camille Lopez told me that he was really actually almost pissed off, because the reason why he resigned is because of Frank asked him to resign, and a couple of players have been like that.
We talked about why you ended up leaving, but you nearly ended up staying and nearly signing for Perpignan as well before you chose to go to Japan. But did you think it was the year, like we're the same age, we came through age grade together, obviously with COVID, finances being hit, GIF restrictions coming in and pelting everything. Did you find this year it was like that contract too far in France? It was unfortunate timing for our year of foreigners that loads of people got shifted on, and you were maybe one of those unfortunate casualties that couldn't quite re-sign the top 14, because like when you were playing there, and I think there was something like 6 head coaches in top 14 were phoning and asking like, what's Greig doing? Is he staying? And then nothing came through pipeline wise, because A, there was no finance, and B, everybody had to sort of get rid of all their non-GIF players. So was that the kind of contract too far, do you reckon? Think you're a little bit unfortunate not to try and stay in France and do one more?
I don't know, Johnny. I think it's a tough one to answer. I guess, you know, almost sitting on the outside of it. But I've no doubt, like going forward, I think you know, the GIF you know, impact it's going to have on you know, foreign players coming into France. And I think obviously the restrictions are getting tighter and tighter. So it's probably going to be harder and harder. As you mentioned, you know, I spoke to Perpignan, which actually I was really close, probably, and I was really torn what to do to stay in France and sign for Perpignan, because I was really impressed by the Perpignan coaches. I think they sort of took a long time to come and speak to me and say, look, the club have kind of made mistakes in the past, and we're trying to get good people now and sort of bring the youth through. And you know, they sort of looked at me as being a big figure, I guess, and trying to help that happen and bring through the youth players. So you know, I was quite, you know, humbled by that, and I was really close to going, because it's, in terms of, well, one, a club, in terms of the history, it's fantastic. The support base, you know, 2, lifestyle, you know, would have been awesome as well. But I think just, you know, the Japanese thing, it was a really good opportunity to just experience something completely different in my career. And as you guys all know, the same as me, you only really get one chance at it. So I just felt that if I don't do this now, I'll never be able to do it. So that was probably the reason in the end that, I ended up, coming over here rather than staying in France.
And you mentioned the lifestyle and the culture in France. You obviously enjoyed it. You stayed there for a few years and almost stayed and moved to Perpignan and stayed in France longer. We often discuss on here that it gets a bad rep sometimes, particularly the coaching element. But how did you find it in terms of moving? You played in the Premiership, you've played in the Pro 14, now you're playing in the top league. How did you find the adjusting to obviously a different way of doing things, but the coaching in France?
Well, I think I was quite lucky, Tim, to be fair, because we've already touched on the show about Frank Azema, and I think Frank's probably had a lot of influence in his career, from foreign coaches, but Frank's also a guy, he's willing to learn, and he sort of he'll admit himself he's not got all the answers, and he's willing to speak to players, speak to different coaches, and go and learn. So, I was probably quite lucky in a sense that the coaching for me was really good at Clermont as well, because, Xavier Sidoni as well, he was there at the time. He's a skills and sort of backs coach when I was there. I know he's taken on a bigger role at the club now, so a really good coach. So, certainly, from my time in France, certainly no complaints. I was probably one of the reasons why I went to Clermont, because I knew that they had that, kind of reputation of a club that are really well run, but also the training facilities as well are some of the best in the world. So, my experience in France from that sort of real stability, good coaching, I couldn't have been in a better place.
And Johnny mentioned it before, Morgan Parra. I just want to ask about that relationship, because it must be tough going into a club with a guy like that ahead of you and competing against him. Benji's mentioned before he is quite a dominant force in that dressing room, as you would imagine after being there and playing such a prominent role for so long. What was your relationship like with him, and how tricky was that going in and essentially trying to take that shirt off him that he's had for so long?
Yeah, listen, I think there was probably times that Morgan didn't maybe like me too much in those times. I'd get frustrated as well. But I think I really thought long and hard about when I was going to Clermont. I knew that would be one of the big challenges. But for me it was really healthy, because I knew if I wanted to one, play in the team, two, play good rugby, I really need to push myself. To get into that Clermont team and in front of Morgan, or playing alongside Morgan, whatever it was. And I always just said to myself, if I get chosen, if I get given that opportunity, I'll make sure I'm ready to play, and I'll just put my best rugby on the field and let my rugby do the talking. So that's what I tried to do in my time in Clermont. And I think certainly that second season I was there, I was in really good form and really enjoying my time in France, and two, my rugby. And I think building the relationships, also with Morgan as well, because he's as we talked about before, he's a massive figure for the club, and he understands the top 14. I've listened to the show and before, and Benji, Johnnie, you guys have talked about it before. Top 14 is different. It's a little bit different from other competitions. So, I would sort of use Morgan as well to try and help my game in the top 14.
To be honest, when there's two guys who are ready to compete at that level, there's a sense of respect between them too. I think by challenging each other, not making it easy for each other, by going full on, was actually a way of respecting each other pretty much. And I felt that, funnily enough, the two of them had the same attitude respectively. So Greig didn't mind being on the bench, but he clearly showed that, listen, that's not why he came here. He was there to challenge and to compete for their starting position. And at the same time, every time that Morgan was on the bench, he's like, listen, I can't wait to kick him off the team, because that's my team, that's my thing. But that only brought the best out of the two. And to be honest, I think you've mentioned it a few times, Greig, once you understood what the animal of top 14 was from within, you actually had more respect for what Morgan did in terms of body commitment and knowing exactly the edge that it needs to perform. And the same way that Greig coming over to Clermont, Morgan after a couple of months, and it usually takes Morgan longer because he's because he can be a bit of a dick. But it took him a little bit more time. But in the end, he would fully admit that he was really impressed with the way that Greig handled that transition and understanding the beast that is top 14 in French rugby, and then performing at it, if you know what I mean. So it was really a matter of mutual respect, but it just takes a bit of time with those angry little shits that are number 9, basically.
Yeah, that's it. Thankfully, we never had too much contact at training in Clermont as well. It's probably helped if we were able to stay out each other's way a little bit during the weekend and stuff like that. But I think, as you mentioned there, Morgan he was pretty aggressive, for a 9, and I think that longevity he's had in the top 14 in terms of the way he does play for Clermont. He puts his body on the line, and he's almost like a 9th forward a little bit when he plays for Clermont, especially at Stade Marcel Michelin. So, yeah, I learned a lot, I guess, pretty quickly of the way he played when I was there. And I guess, when Morgan wasn't playing, when I was playing, that, I had that, standard to live up to, I guess, in many ways. And that probably helped me, play some good rugby as well.
And just before we let you go, Greig, you're obviously enjoying the start to life in Japan, but how long are you there for? Have you got another big move in you after that? And have you thought about what you might do after you leave Japan, life after rugby, or another big move?
I don't know about many more big moves now, to be honest, Tim. I think, obviously I'm 35 now, and I've signed for 2 seasons out here with NTT. The season length's pretty short. Albeit pre-season's been a fairly long one this year, so I'm hanging on there at the minute, and I'm pretty happy the league started now. So I don't know is the answer, is the short answer anyway, in terms of what I'm going to do. And when my contract runs out over here, I can't see myself playing too much longer off the back of that. That's for sure. I'm not missing Scotland, but a lot of times you think about it. My parents are not getting any younger now. I've been away from Scotland now for a long time. I was down in Gloucester, Clermont, so I've been away 7-8 years now. Certainly on the horizon, I'll be able to move back to Scotland at some point. I'm pretty passionate about staying in the game, for sure. I've got another couple of different avenues that I'm involved in at the moment away from the game, which I'm really enjoying as well, because I think when you get to the age and stage that I'm at, I think it's really important to start planning about what you're eventually going to do. And I definitely want to stay in the game, but whether that becomes feasible, you just never know.
So what are you doing away from the game, mate? You talked about a couple of adventures. Anything interesting going on? Like, obviously, I've known you since we were 16. I know that you would be an amazing skills coach, kicking coach, analyst. Like, rugby sense, you'd be phenomenal. You would
drinking
100%...
coach as well, apparently, Johnny.
Not me. I need coaching.
Yeah, more practice. But you're too straight-laced. Need some practice. But in terms of getting back to Scotland, any other avenues apart from coaching? Because 100% you could do that. You'd be phenomenal. We've always known that. But anything else that piqued your interest you'd like to get involved in?
Yeah, I think obviously coming back to Scotland I'm a really passionate Scotsman. Obviously Johnnie and Benji. I think you've probably picked up on from a couple of nights down in the wine cave in your place in Clermont. So I'm involved with
Caledonia.
I'm involved with a new whiskey startup back in Scotland called Wolf Creek, which is really exciting for me because, as I said, I think just to have that something away from the game, and it just gives me sort of a bit of a new stimulus, I guess, to get my teeth sunk into something and almost learn a bit of a new craft as well. So Wolf Creek's going to be based in Stirling with a brand new distillery that's due to start being built later on this year, if all goes to plan, with COVID, etc. Hopefully we can get that up and running. Richard Patterson is the main man behind that. Anybody that knows the whiskey, Richard Patterson is right up there in terms of some of the world's best in terms of distillation and stuff like that. So I'm involved with they guys at the moment as global brand ambassador, which is awesome because out here in Japan they absolutely love their whiskey. I probably never realised how much before I got here. Out here in Japan, they drink highballs, which is whiskey and soda. So it's a pretty cool drink out in this part of the world that all the sort of young kids drink it. So I think I've made quite a few good connections out here already. I'm working in the background, for Wolf Craig, and hopefully we're going to be able to bring it to the Japanese market at some point as well.
You're a smart man. Smart man. They love their whiskey and they love Mr. Greig as well. So you've done well, Greig. Well done, mate.
Thanks ever so much for coming on the show, Greg, and a massive good luck with the top league season, and good luck with the whiskey as well. We look forward to tasting it.
Cheers, guys. Pleasure.
Cheers, Greig. Cheers, mate. Take care, Greggy.
Cheers.